This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. We have another great show. Again, as I always say, we just don't report the news, we make the news. Larry Klayman, if I do say myself, is out there on the edge. I'm taking risks. I'm actually trying to bring about justice. I'm not just trying to get documents and information. I'm trying to get justice. And just this week, we saw, with regard to information that was released, that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, those lovebirds, as well as others at the FBI, working before and during the time they were with Mueller, were leaking classified information, grand jury information in all likelihood, with regard to President Trump. This would be during the latter period when they were working with Mueller. We know that agents at the FBI do leak. There are good special agents and there are bad special agents, but the people at the top have become totally corrupt. And we currently have an FBI director, Christopher Wray. I'm getting confused with the independent counsel that succeeded Ken Starr. They were both worthless, by the way, who is doing nothing. He's sitting on top of this scandal at the FBI. Now, many months ago, about 8 months ago, yours truly in Freedom Watch filed a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit after we were stonewalled on communications between Mueller and the media with regard to grand jury leaks concerning the ongoing witch hunt of President Trump, as well as the Russian collusion and obstruction of justice aspects of those investigations. What happened was the FBI, the Justice Department, and of course the Office of Special Counsel with Mueller didn't respond. They dragged their feet on producing these documents. We believe these documents will show that there have been criminal, illegal grand jury leaks. And once we show that, Mueller will be gone. The witch hunt will be over. Even Democrats won't be able to defend him because this is criminal. In fact, the liberal law professor Alan Dershowitz just said this the other night on cable networks, that grand jury leaks are criminal. And of course, we can use this information for our citizens' grand juries that we're starting up soon. And we're going to be dealing with Mueller first. We're going to be seeking his indictment, his trial, his conviction, his sentencing, and peaceful and legal citizens' arrest for him and his prosecutors. We'll ask the president, of course, to enforce that sentencing, and we'll see what he does at that particular point in time. But to make the long story short, to this day, the Office of Special Counsel of Robert Mueller, the Justice Department, and the FBI, of course, is part of this corrupt Justice Department, have produced very few records. And just in the last few weeks, they came up with their latest excuse. We've heard this before. I heard it back in the early 2000s when Hillary Clinton couldn't produce her emails from the White House. They were being sought by Ken Starr, by Congress, and yes, Larry Klayman, when I ran Judicial Watch, which of course I founded. Of course, it was a different Judicial Watch in those days. It wasn't just seeking documents. This was in the context of an actual lawsuit concerning the Filegate scandal, the illegal obtaining of files on the adversaries of the Clintons. This, thus, is part of an obstruction of justice. That what we learned recently is that the Department of Justice, the Office of Special Counsel, the FBI came back and said, oh, there's a computer glitch. We can't produce all these documents now. Judge Emmett Sullivan, a very good judge, interestingly first appointed by President George W. Bush to the Superior Court, and then, by President H.W. Bush to the Superior Court in the District of Columbia, And then Bill Clinton to the federal bench put his foot down and said all these documents had to be produced by September 4th of this year. Of course, this computer glitch came up. And he therefore ordered that a supplemental status report be filed. This was filed just yesterday. And there's no guarantees and no time frame as to when these documents are going to be produced, these crucial documents that could really knock Mueller out. So I'm going to be going back to Judge Sullivan this week, and I'm going to be requesting an evidentiary hearing, a trial over this obstruction of justice. Because why is there this delay? Why is there this sham of a computer glitch that they can't produce all the documents off of their email servers? We've heard about that before. It's because Mueller is going into the trial of Paul Manafort. It's because as we speak, Mueller is writing an impeachment report against President Trump. He will release this, if not before the midterm elections, then shortly thereafter. There'll be leaks, of course, leading up to the midterms to try to influence the midterm elections so that the House of Representatives turns over to the Democrats, and the president will surely be impeached when that happens because, of course, Nancy Pelosi will be the speaker, and at her side will be the evil Maxine Walters, that reverse racist, radical black lunatic that says she wants to take the president out. And to say take him out, he doesn't even say legally. Seems to be a physical threat of sorts. And of course, we see violence increasing on the left these days. So that's why we're pushing so hard for these documents. I believe that once they're released, that this will be the end of Mueller and the witch hunt. And you have to ask yourself the question, why aren't the president lawyers pursuing this as well? Why have they sat there basically just going on Fox News, pontificating all the time without doing anything? They could have filed the same Freedom of Information Act request that I did. More importantly, Trump, who is head of the executive branch, could order Mueller to turn over all of the communications with the media, which would show the grand jury leaks. Why haven't the president's lawyers brought a case for the illegal surveillance against the president? The president has nothing to lose. The intel agencies and the FBI have everything about him. They got his tax records. They got everything, womb to tomb, him, his family, and his colleagues. But instead, Rudy Giuliani and Jay Sekulow, both very nice people, but part of that Washington establishment, that Republican establishment, can't think out of the box. They think in a conventional way. And they also think more of themselves than they think of the president because they don't want to stick their neck out. Because if they stick their neck out too far and offend the powers to be in Washington, the other aspects of their private legal practice or their public interest practice in the case of Sekulow could be affected. They want that clubby atmosphere that they can ask for favors in the future or at least not be retaliated against by the establishments of both political parties, particularly at the Justice Department, where we know that 97% of all the lawyers were Clinton loyalists that are Democrats. It's all against the president. And that's why I raise this, because the president has had his back pushed up against the wall. He's had incompetent and negligent legal representation. He's failed to take action to protect himself. He's beaten up every single day. And now we know that the social media companies who I sued last week for Freedom Watch, a class action lawsuit, Google, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Apple, are all colluding, conspiring to limit communications by conservatives, libertarians, people of faith that not only will support the president, but try to bring about some ethics and morality to this country. The left has no ethics and morality. The left is based on a premise similar to the Bolsheviks in 1917. They don't generally believe in God. They believe the government is their God. They want a dictatorship run by the left. These social media companies, and it was revealed this week that Google, right after the 2016 elections, which resulted in Donald Trump being elected president, did a seminar where they were basically trashing Trump, saying they were so sad over Hillary. This explains why these CEOs of the social media companies have done everything to exclude Larry Klayman, Freedom Watch, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Alex Jones, other conservatives from getting out the word. This also lets us raise money because we need the money to stay in business and to do what we need to do. So it hurts us financially. So not only is this an antitrust violation, I'm a former antitrust lawyer of the antitrust division of the Justice Department. I helped break up the AT&T monopoly during the Reagan administration. We're going to probably be amending our case to include a RICO violation. There's RICO here, as well as other violations. So this is a very important case, and we need your support. And go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute with tax-deductible contributions, sign up for a Justice Strike Force. This type of action differentiates Freedom Watch today from what Judicial Watch used to be when I ran it. As I've said many times, I want people to know this because it's not just comparative advertising, but you need to know where to put your contributions. You need to know where to put your faith. It's good that Judicial Watch gets records, but that's basically most of what they do. Tom Fitton is not a lawyer. The other young lawyers there have never tried a case of any great complexity. I have. I'm a lawyer of 41 years. This is why Freedom Watch really is your Justice Department today. And it's why you need to go to freedomwatchusa.org, sign up for our cases, support our causes. Now, Larry Klayman, in his private capacity, just brought another case against Hollywood and the media, against Sacha Baron Cohen for Judge Roy Moore. No one would stand up for Judge Moore. He's a fine man. I've known him for a long time. He's not a pedophile, but Sacha Baron Cohen, going with the flow and wanting to make money with regard to his show on Showtime and CBS, defamed my client. They defrauded my client. So I brought a case for $95 million, not because we're looking for money, but we want justice, and we want to hurt Sacha Baron Cohen, CBS, and Showtime to prevent these things from happening before. So this is why, even though this is a private case, this translates into what I do at Freedom Watch in terms of the hard-hitting cases I do there as well. And I hope that you'll support us. Listen to this radio show. Share it. People need to hear it. We need to educate the American people. We need to mobilize the colonies, so to speak, as we did in 1776. And we need to wage a second American Revolution to restore the vision of our founding fathers. I'll be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Dangerous.
You don't care. Use the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
The leftist social media is trying to wage a leftist revolution to take over this country. They realize that with their indoctrination, I mean, it's similar to Goebbels and Hitler during World War II. I mean, this is propaganda that they're getting out. Couple that with the violence of Black Lives Matter. We're going to talk about that in the next segment with Demetrick Pennie, my fine client, African-American client, Dallas police officer who stood up to the tyranny of Black Lives Matter, Louis Farrakhan and the other radical black groups in Dallas after the massacre a couple years ago. Couple that with the violence and the social media that's trying to change the fabric of this country. Couple that with what's going to happen likely with regard to the midterm elections with the Democrats taking over the House of Representatives and impeaching the president. His back is up against the wall. We need to save him. He's our last hope as a president. We're not going to have a president like President Trump again. He calls it like it is. Yes, he's coarse. Yes, he says things perhaps he could make a little bit more diplomatic, to put it mildly. But what other president would tell you about the corruption in the legal system and talk honestly about it? What other president would deal with illegal immigration and build a wall? What other president would take on China, put in tariffs, not because he's not a free trader and a protectionist, but because he wants China to open up its markets? What other president would remove the United States from any semblance of having to deal with the International Criminal Court, which is a total sham stacked against American interests? I can go on and on and on. But to contrast what President Trump has done, and of course, he nullified the agreement with Iran, which was the best thing he could have ever done. And, you know, frankly, I don't want anybody to die, but I frankly hope that we get into a military confrontation with Iran, not to kill civilians over there, but to take out their regime, take out their military, take out the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. It's going to need to be done. And Israel needs to join us. Others need to join us. Of course, the Europeans won't. They're cowards and they want to do business with Iran. You know, this is the biggest threat. It's even a bigger threat than North Korea. So what's happening today? By the way, it's a bigger threat because they're radical Islamic extremists. Kim Jong-un of North Korea really has no religious ideology. These people are lunatics in Iran. They hate Christians. They hate Jews. They want us all dead. It's as simple as that. So either we take them out or they take us out eventually. Well, this week, our former Secretary of State, former failed presidential candidate, John Kerry, decides he's going to conduct diplomacy with Iran because he wants to save this bad deal. Now, this is the same thing that General Mike Flynn and Trump were being accused of right after they were elected. It's against American law. It's criminal to be doing business, doing diplomatic negotiations, unless you have the authority to do it as president. Well, Kerry's doing this. And this is why our citizens' grand juries are so important. Yes, our first target is going to be Robert Mueller. We need to take him out. We need to take out his second-in-command Fuhrer, Andrew Weissman. We need to get rid of that witch hunt so this president can function and get Mueller off his back. He's going to have to deal with rabid Democrats in Congress and the evil forces of the left and the media. But Kerry needs to be taken out. So right after we indict, try, and convict Mueller, we're going to go after Kerry because this is outrageous. This is endangering our national security. John Kerry is a vehement anti-Semite. He hates the Jewish people. He hates Israel. It's well established. He did everything he could, along with Obama, to harm Israel. Israel is our most important ally. It's our only real ally. It's our only trusted ally. It's part of our Judeo-Christian heritage. You know, I was born Jewish, and I'm also a Christian. I accepted Christ. I'm very proud of both of my heritages, and that Judeo-Christian heritage is not just what made the Holy Land what it is. It made America great, and we need to protect it. And John Kerry is undermining that, this really disgusting, vile anti-Semite who is now trying to coddle up to Iran. In addition to John Kerry, we'll, of course, be indicting the Clintons, Bill and Hillary, the Bonnie and Clyde of American politics, Barack Obama himself, the intelligence czars, Brennan and Clapper under Obama that conducted illegal surveillance, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, the Lovebirds, Bruce Orr, you know who he is. He's still running the criminal task force at the Justice Department, incredibly. And, of course, we'll be indicting Jeff Sessions because he's violated his oath of office. He's a disgrace. He needs to go. The American people need to rise up. We need to do it ourselves. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatch.usa.org. Contribute with tax-deductible contributions. Sign our Justice League. Get our newsletters. Share with other people what you learn. We need to wage a second American revolution. The printing press in the days leading up to our first revolution in 1776 is what mobilized the colonies. That's exactly what we're doing with this radio show and with Judicial Watch's website at freedomwatchusa.org. I'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I've got with me now my very good friend and client, a truly brave individual, someone who stuck his neck out for justice. His name is Demetrick Pennie. He's a police officer in Dallas, Texas. He was assaulted during the fatal massacre many years ago where many of his brothers died. He stood up. He brought lawsuits against Black Lives Matter, against the New Black Panthers Party, against Louis Farrakhan, against Al Sharpton. He's African American. And just like I'm someone who stands up for my country, and I'm a minority as well, I really admire Demetrick because in doing that, he, of course, was threatened. His family was threatened. And he sacrificed a lot to try to bring about justice and to restore law and order, not just to Dallas, but also to the entire country. So I want to introduce you again. He's been on our show before, to Demetrick Pennie, my good friend and brother and comrade in arms, of course, conservative comrade in arms. Demetrick, how are you today?
Yes, sir. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
Demetrick, tell us you know, what happened in the days after that massacre in Dallas, Texas, of police officers by an individual who was incited by Black Lives Matter, Louis Farrakhan, Al Sharpton, the new Black Panthers Party, and others?
Well, this is the thing, and I think we need to put a lot of this in context, because so many people are just disillusioned about what this Black Lives Matter movement was. You know, a lot of people tried to link it to being a grassroots organization, and it was just black people that were tired of police brutality and whatnot. And at the end of the day, I think if you really were to take the time to dissect what the organization was, you would have an opportunity to see that this was an agenda-driven organization that was well-funded. It was a well-funded movement, and it was a radicalized movement. So in leading up to the attack in Dallas, and I think it was a three-pronged issue. I mean, a lot of things that came together. First of all, you had the zealots that were promoting this radicalized ideology and calling for attacks on police officers. That was number one. And then you had the social media companies that were aiding in expanding that radicalized message. It gave them the platforms, Facebook, Google, and Twitter. So they used that platform to proliferate those messages and carrying out police. So even so we saw, before this even happened here in Dallas, we saw how it was being fueled from where it was going with Ferguson and then moving on into Baltimore. We saw that trend coming to Dallas before it got here. And it was all under hashtag Black Lives Matter. That's how they were proliferating this message. So in seeing this, I was one of the first individuals that, being in law enforcement, I know a lot of people were coddling to the Black Lives Matter agenda, because you, on one side, you had black people that didn't want to say that they didn't support hashtag Black Lives Matter, because they're saying, oh, you're so now you're against your own people. And then on the other side, you had white people that were definitely not going to say that they didn't support Black Lives Matter, because they're going to say, oh, you're racist. So it was a double negative that I think a lot of people got caught in the middle of. And for me, I was saying, let's look at the big picture. So when the attack happened in Dallas, I had already knew what was going on. I was working on my PhD at the time, and I was already studying these radicalized attacks and what these radicalized movements were. And I knew that Black Lives Matter, there was nothing positive or remotely positive about the movement. So when the attack happened in Dallas, I knew that this proliferation of this message, hashtag kill police, and when this riot was, and I call it a riot, they say it was a protest, but it was a radicalized attack that happened in Dallas. It was a riot. And it was all fueled by what happened in Baton Rouge with Alton Sterling. So
Demetrick, you actually have a doctorate in this type of activity. Don't you? Tell the listeners about your doctorate.
Yeah, so basically I have a doctorate degree in higher education from Texas Tech University. I actually did my dissertation on mitigating the outcomes of shooting attacks on college campuses. And looking at that particular research, I was already looking at how these radicalized groups on college campuses were basically how they were radicalizing and basically facilitating these shooting attacks. What they were doing in terms of facilitating the shooting attacks, and this is, having the Muslim student unions. They were, it was just a lot of different things that were coming into play. And in doing my research at the time in 2015, the radicalized group that popped under my radar was Black Lives Matter. Now, they didn't get
Demetrick, we met shortly after that Dallas massacre, and you became my client and my friend.
Yes, sir.
And we brought lawsuits against Black Lives Matter, the new Black Panthers Party, Louis Farrakhan, who recently was shown at a video of Aretha Franklin's funeral sitting there with Bill Clinton, if you can believe that, who it came out President Barack Obama had a picture taken with him. It was never revealed before the 2008 elections. He probably wouldn't have been elected if it was revealed. Farrakhan is not only a vehement anti-white hater, he hates Jews and Christians. He's obviously Islamic. He's a black Muslim. But you were threatened after that. the listeners about how you were threatened from the black community and from other communities.
Well, so after the attack happened in Dallas, I knew what was going on, and I started to verbalize what was happening. I started, and because I was African American, and by the way, I'm African American from the inner city, so I understood. I grew up around the Nation of Islam, New Black Panther Party nonsense. I knew what they were used to doing in the black community, so it didn't bother me the same way. So I knew when this happened that I had to expose what these guys were doing in terms of trying to call for these radicalized attacks and creating a race war, essentially. So when I did that, basically that's when the death threats happened. That's when I started getting the death, a lot of them through social media. I mean, it was crazy through social media. And think about how radical this situation had to be for people to send death threats to my job. They sent the letters to the police department.
Well, this is important because the social media, of course, is now being used by Black Lives Matter again and others, as well as ultra-leftists, the CEOs of the social media, Google, Facebook, etc., to destroy the president and, I believe, to wage a takeover by the left of this country to enslave us under a leftist dictatorship. But tell us what's going on right now in Dallas, because there's another crisis with regard to a white police officer who shot a black person, and she's been charged with manslaughter. And there's apparently, we're on the verge of new riots and new violence in Dallas. And Black Lives Matter, of course, is whipping it up, playing a role. This is the way they do fundraising and everything else. And tell us what's going on right now in Dallas, because now everything's going full circle and we're back at it again. And these social media companies are again giving Black Lives Matter and others a platform to wage violence against the rest of us.
Yeah, so let me first say, I mean, my heart goes out to that family that was involved. I mean, it was a tragic situation. None of us know what's going on. So without even speaking about that, what I can tell you is in the days after the shooting was announced that an officer had shot a black male, and that's how the media, the mainstream media played it out. A white officer shoots black man in his home. After that message went out on social media, it became a black and white issue. And what happened was Black Lives Matter, hashtag Black Lives Matter, these groups, these individuals that proliferated this message, they went to the airwaves, they went to social media, and they started promoting that agenda. So what did they do? They tried to radicalize. In fact, they're doing it right now. They're trying to radicalize and mobilize this situation to become another 7/7/2016. And if you don't remember 7/7/2016, that's when 5 police officers were shot here in Dallas during a Black Lives Matter protest. And
killed.
I absolutely shot and killed during that Black Lives Matter protest. That's essentially what we're trying to prevent the social media companies from allowing to happen. They are allowing these messages to be proliferated. There are no restrictions. Social media is the only communication platform in this country that is unregulated.
Well, isn't it ironic, Demetrick, that they don't regulate Black Lives Matter, but they're censoring communications by conservatives like me, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, Alex Jones, and others. But yes, they're promoting Black Lives Matter. And that's why we brought a lawsuit against them, class action. I talked about that earlier in the show, and I hope people will support that by going to freedomwatchusa.org. But you know what? This leftist media has also tried to destroy you recently. Tell us about that.
Sir. Well, I had so back in 2016, the first attempt was in 2016 when they tried to destroy me after we filed the Black Lives Matter lawsuit. They wrote a hit piece on me. And listen, I'm thinking that the media, there is no way that the media can just not have any journalistic integrity. They're going to have to tell the story the way that it is and not generate their facts. So what they did was, this time around, they attacked me. They attacked my 2 benevolent foundations. They attacked my political beliefs, and they attacked my upbringing. the Dallas Morning News. It was basically what they did was they wrote and they talked about how one of the most significant lines in it, and I think it tells the story. There are several racial undertones in the article, but when you read it, one of the things that sticks in my mind is how she says there's a title called "From Food Stamps to Fox News," and I'm thinking that there's no way that a journalist would write something like that. So basically what she was trying to do was show that I am this unknown police sergeant who has these benevolent foundations, who has access to millions of dollars, but at the same time, because I'm from the inner city, I'm from the hood, that I can't be trusted with those monies. That was basically the overall tone of that story. So when I try
it's ironic that people play that race card both ways. Black Lives Matter, New Black Panthers Party, Farrakhan, they're racist, and then now you've got a leftist publication, that's white, that's also playing that race card and denigrating you because you're from the hood. I come from a family in the meatpacking business. That toughened me up, okay? And you came from the hood. That toughened you up. And we don't back down to these people. And we, the American people, need to rise up and not be afraid any more than our founding fathers were afraid. And Demetrick, people should contribute to your group. And I know that you're an honest man. I know that you are. And I know that your foundations are doing a lot of good for police officers and others in Dallas who've been harmed by all of this. So tell us where they can go to help out your organization, to contribute.
Yes. So if you want to support the Dallas Fallen Officer Foundation, go to dallasfof.org. If you want to support the Texas Fallen Officer Foundation, go to texasfof.org. Both organizations, or like I said, we're nationally recognized. I mean, we're in everybody's, we're in all these different states. We're supporting every officer, fallen officers. The goal is basically to mitigate the outcomes or the financial impact that are on these families after an officer dies in the line of duty or after an officer is critically injured. And I've taken that role on. This is something that I believe in. I lost a lot of my friends in the line of duty, which was basically the premise behind me creating these organizations. And what you have is a city that has been monopolized by other groups, and they're jealous of the short-term notoriety that I've developed over the years.
Well, that's right. And, we've got a little bit of time left here, but I want to urge people to support Demetrick and his groups. And he's a victim. He's part of this entire conspiracy by the left to take down conservatives, people that stand up for the values of our founding fathers. I'm going to be right back with our final segment. Demetrick, you are a true patriot, my good friend, my brother. Thank you for standing there with the American people. God bless you.
God bless America.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
Sometimes I joke a little bit and call myself the lawyer of last resort. I am a lawyer. Okay, I am running Freedom Watch. When I ran Judicial Watch, I brought hard-hitting cases. Now that I run Freedom Watch, we bring hard-hitting cases, investigations, as well as our citizens' grand juries. That's what differentiates Freedom Watch from Judicial Watch today. Tom Fitton, who runs Judicial Watch, is not a lawyer. He has young lawyers there. They're bringing cases, getting documents. The media likes that. It gets out. They make news. But we need justice. It's not enough just to get documents. And, of course, we're doing that as well. But we're bringing these hard-hitting cases. And that's why you really need to support Freedom Watch. We're the only game in town. We are your Justice Department. You have no Justice Department, particularly under Jeff Sessions. He's no better than the attorneys general that preceded him. I mean, by abdicating his responsibility, by sticking his head in the sand, and even with regard to social media, his answer to that is, I'll have meetings. I'll have meetings with state's attorney general. But you know what? He has an antitrust division. He could have empowered at this point already a civil investigative investigation of these media companies. And if something turned up that was criminal, he could proceed in that regard as well. But he didn't do that. Who does that? Larry Klayman and Freedom Watch. Judicial Watch doesn't do that. They don't have the expertise to do that. They don't have an antitrust lawyer on their staff. They don't have somebody who really knows how to try a case. Maybe they tried a few simple cases. But I've been a trial lawyer 41 years. So this is why you need to support Freedom Watch. And don't be confused by the hype in the social media. Don't be confused by the hype on Fox News. Don't be confused by the hype to try to boost ratings and advertising dollars on other networks. Radio America and Larry Klayman, we tell the truth. We get it out there. We lay it on the line. We're not afraid, and you cannot be afraid, and you need to join us. And in my private capacity, I have a new client. His name's Schaefer Cox. Check him out on Google. Similar situation to what happened with the Bundys. He was a leader that was trying to mobilize support to go against the tyranny of the federal government. He was set up by FBI informants. He was convicted. He was tried. He's now in prison until 2033. I'm trying to get him out. He was, in fact, framed, and he didn't harm anybody, but they made him look like he was the super militia leader of the world that was going to threaten and kill everybody. Well, that's just not true. So we're seeking all of the exculpatory evidence that was not produced by the Justice Department and by the FBI to put Schaefer Cox away. Because you know what? Schaefer is a very compelling person. He's extremely smart. He's a Jewish Christian like me, by the way. I was talking to him yesterday in prison. He's in prison in Terre Haute, Indiana. And people like Schaefer Cox become a threat to the left. They become a threat to the establishment of both political parties in Washington, D.C. And that's why Larry Klayman will stand in the breach for them. No one else will do it. You know, I represent a lot of clients who have been smeared and destroyed. I represent Judge Roy Moore. He's not a pedophile. He's a fine man. He's a good Christian, like you are. And if you were Jewish, he would be a good Jew. He supports Israel, but he is a Christian. I support Sheriff Joe Arpaio. He's a good man. I've never heard a racist remark out of him. I stood there for the Bundys. I'll stand there for you. I stand there for Schaefer Cox. Check him out on Google. Google it. Because if no one does this, and this is, of course, what John Adams did in the days leading up to the American Revolution in Massachusetts, he took on unpopular causes. He took on causes for justice. He represented British troops who shot on colonialists and killed some of them on Boston Common. He lost his law practice. He later went on to found a great nation along with his founding fathers, people like Benjamin Franklin, John Hancock, and others. You know, this is why you need to support Freedom Watch, and go to freedomwatchusa.org, freedomwatch.org, freedomwatchusa.org. I can't say it enough. We need your strong tax-deductible contributions. We need to get bigger. We are your Justice Department. You have no other. And you need a lawyer like myself, if I do say so myself, that's willing to stick his neck out, to risk all. It isn't just going to do whatever he does to get documents to get on Fox News, on cable networks. I prefer Newsmax. Go to Newsmax. Watch that. I can say what I want on Newsmax. You need to listen to this show on Radio America. Share it with your friends, because we need to wage a second American revolution. We need to mobilize our troops. And I'll be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, God bless you, God bless your family, God bless America, and God save America.